Hi there, I'm Coach Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And in this video, we're going to be talking to you about your ex is silent. Are they trying to punish you?
This one's tough.
It really is. Understanding why somebody's doing what they're doing, especially at a breakup, can be really confusing. You're already devastated and feeling massive amounts of anxiety, and it really clouds your judgment. So trying to figure out what your ex is thinking or feeling at that time could be really difficult. So we're going to talk about that today to help you see there are often two big reasons why someone is silent after the breakup.
Right, and most commonly, it's because they need space. They've just made this huge decision about the relationship, and they're likely in that relief stage initially.
Yeah.
However, we also want to talk about that punishing side, that punitive side, if you will, because that does also happen too.
Yeah, sadly, a lot of people will purposely try and hurt you, and they are silent with you like as a tactic to really, get revenge, or they're angry at you.
And a lot of times I see this most commonly with impulsive breakups. A lot of times it's a breakup of passion, like a murder of passion. It happens in the moment. You're feeling intense feelings. Maybe you're angry at one another. And so this impulsive breakup happens. And then as a means of trying to regain some semblance of control, they just completely stonewall and wait. So there could be some of that. But this kind of punitive silence is when somebody is purposefully withholding because they know it gets to you. They know it bothers you. They know that you will be upset by that withheld affection, and it's kind of like an I'll show you. If you're going to act that way, then you don't get any of my attention. It's out of anger, and it's coming from a place of wanting to get you to feel the anger that they feel. They also want you to be upset. They also want you to feel hurt because they feel hurt.
And not only that, they know what you're going to do when they're like that, because you'll start, pursuing them. You'll start chasing them. You'll start trying to get their attention, and they feel like this power, right?
Yeah.
It's like now they feel like, I got them.
Now, before you get all in your head about this, because I know many of you are like, I knew it. I knew that old...
That old one?
That old hag.
The old one, like the mother in the other video we just filmed?
I knew that old hag was doing it on purpose. No. Before you get all in your head about it, this is typically a pattern. So if you are dating somebody and they typically stonewall when they're angry, if they typically resort to becoming really silent and ghosting you and not really giving you much after an argument when they're upset, then during a breakup, especially an impulsive breakup, that's something that you'll see. But it is something to consider. If they are not typically that person to purposefully withhold their attention and affection and communication, then more than likely during the breakup, this is not I'm trying to hurt my partner, but more of a protective response.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the other big reason is that many times someone is silent because they need to withdraw, and they have to kind of process, and they need to shut down. And it's hard to understand on the other side of it, but it does make sense to us. We've seen it very often, Your ex could be overwhelmed. They're emotionally flooded. They're not sure what they want. They're not sure how they feel yet. Or maybe they're just not ready to talk. Sometimes people aren't ready yet. They're just angry or frustrated or disappointed or hurt or whatever it is, and they're not ready to connect with you again and repair that connection. So you may see an ex just go inward and create distance with you. Now, this is especially common with someone that has an avoidant attachment style, because they often do this anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They can get overwhelmed and shut down over many difficult areas in life, and including closeness. But if you dated somebody that you suspect was avoidant, they're likely going to go silent because they have to get to a place where they kind of can regulate themselves, regulate their emotions, kind of like be like this turtle in a shell where they are left alone and they're not ready to come out of that shell yet.
Yeah.
It's like when you're on the beach with the crabs and, they go and hide in the shell and then they need a little while before they
Yeah.
come around. Yeah, that's kind of like how avoidants are.
And it can be so hard to understand if you have more anxious tendencies or more of an anxious attachment style. Because in your mind, you're thinking, well, how angry would I have to be at a person to not want to be around them 24/7? How angry would I have to be at a person to not want to talk with them? Because you are more drawn to feeling that safety and connection. For the avoidant, it's the complete opposite. So it can be hard to understand their silence. Sometimes it's easier to understand their silence as they must be angry. They must be trying to do this on purpose or to punish me, than it is to understand their silence as them processing, because we don't process that way, or the anxious person doesn't process that way. So something to consider is that different people process things differently, and silence can be a form of processing for those who are more avoidant.
But it doesn't mean they're going to stay silent
Right.
forever,
That
which
too.
is important.
Mm-hmm. Now, we want to talk a little bit about your reaction to this, because whether it's silence because they are doing it on purpose in those cases that I think are more rare, or whether they are processing, distancing, going through with their decision, how you behave makes a huge difference. If you begin to chase and try to force a conversation out of them, or try to force them to say the things that you want to hear, it likely is not going to go very well. And it just teaches them that they can withdraw, and you are going to be the one panicking, apologizing, like basically mending the gap, right? So we need to give them that space to do whatever it is that they need to do, process, be angry, cool down, whatever it is, and indefinitely go into no contact until they are ready.
Yep, because they will reach out when they're ready.
Mm-hmm. And you don't want this to lead to an imbalance in the relationship, right? If they're withdrawing because they feel overwhelmed, those repeated messages are only going to create more overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to feel as though their need for distance isn't being respected, that they're not being taken seriously. They're going to pull away even further. And if their silence is because they're trying to punish you, you don't want to reinforce that either. You don't want to say, well, and in the case that their silence is on purpose and they're trying to get to you, you definitely don't want to reinforce that. You definitely don't want to reach out to them and say, oh, this is getting to me. This is working. I am angry.
Yeah, exactly.
Or I need you. I need you to soothe, or I need you to be okay. So you don't want to reinforce that kind of behavior. You want to say, okay, if you're going to give me space, that's okay. I'm going to respect that. I'm going to respect the space that you need. You don't want to add that type of pressure.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that is so hard for you in this situation is feeling like it's so personal.
Mm-hmm.
Like we said just a minute ago, a lot of times they go silent because they have to shut down and process and think about things. But when we're feeling that space in the connection and we start to get overwhelmed with anxiety, a lot of times we just have these terrible thoughts about abandonment come in our mind, and we start to say all these things to ourselves and create these stories. And they're not good ones. You never cared about me. They never loved me. They've already forgotten about me. I'm never going to hear from them again. I never meant anything to them. And all of the horrible things we tell ourselves just because they're being silent. Think about that. All of the stories that we're creating just because there is a little space between you and that person. Now, when you're going through a breakup, those periods of time can get extended. But you don't know what they're thinking in that moment. You don't know how they're feeling about things. Exes come back all the time. I see this all the time. In fact, I just had a couple that came back this week that I got some success stories that people are going to send me. So they come back. They don't look like they're going to when they're being so cold or so distant and they're not replying to you. Silence isn't going to tell you everything that they're feeling. It's just telling you what they're currently able to communicate with you. Okay? Don't overthink that. Your ex can very well be missing you, but remain silent, right? Because they might not be ready to repair that relationship or still have a lot of doubts about repairing that relationship. They're going through a lot of feelings too. Just because you haven't heard from them does not mean that they don't think about you, and it doesn't mean that they don't care.
Yeah. And the bottom line is you have to be okay with leaving the ball in their court. You have to be okay with them being autonomous, making their own decisions, and them processing the breakup however they will process the breakup. So you have to be willing to self-soothe during this period. They know how to reach out to you. They know how to repair, whether they had an impulsive moment where they broke up with you because they were angry and upset and they're trying to punish you and get to you. It's up to them to repair that. You know, if you are in a relationship with somebody who constantly threatens the relationship and who constantly does break up with you, those things still have consequences, right? Those are pretty serious words in a commitment and in a partnership. And so we have to be willing to let people process and have them be humble enough to repair. We are very much on the boat of leave the ball in their court. If an ex breaks up with you, you want them to come to you.
Yep.
And we've seen even very, very stubborn exes turn around. But I'll say to that, even in those situations, let's say there is somebody who is doing it on purpose. They're trying to get to you and it's not working, and time passes and time passes and time passes. You have to be able to honor that, even for what it is. So there are no guarantees that an ex is going to come back. And somebody can be angry and hold on to that anger for a very, very, very long time. And you have to consider, would that person have the skills necessary to be in a healthy relationship?
Absolutely. It's not easy to think about and consider all of these different points and perspectives, especially when you feel so devastated inside. You just know that a lot of times, just because your ex is silent, it doesn't mean that they don't think about you. It doesn't mean that they don't care. Yes, sometimes exes are trying to hurt you and punish you. But even in those cases, it doesn't mean that they're always going to do it. It's just that you kind of want to look at their pattern. Are they known for this? Did they do this to you before? Or is this something completely out of character for them? Leave them alone. Like we said, a more enlightened version of yourself where you've had some growth and you see things more clearly and you're more prepared to have a healthy relationship when they return.
Exactly.
All right. Hopefully this one's been helpful to you. If you'd like to get our help personally, you could do that on my website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Zoom calls. Coach Victoria is also available for Zoom calls.
I'm here whenever you'd like to chat.
Just click on her name on the top of the website to schedule with her. That's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And we will talk with you soon.